Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today we're going to do a character guide on Ardyn. So Ardyn just came back with his FR and C90. This is basically what I predicted. So basically when they did the community stream slides and they had a mystery FR and they never talked about Ardyn, my number one pick for this character would be Ardyn. People speculated Minwu, but I knew it wouldn't be Minwu because Minwu isn't tied to like a Crevasse event, and the Crevasse is a exclusive like global first event, right? So I knew that Ardyn was probably going to be in the slot, and then when they swapped out Golbez in that video, when we found out he got switched for Garland, I predicted that Golbez would be switched to the Crevasse event, which he was. So I kind of called that pretty good there. But once again, they will swap these characters around once in a while. But Ardyn didn't get moved around too bad, so he's pretty much in the similar area that he would have been. So in this video, we're going to look at Ardyn's calls, his artifacts, and his spheres. For those of you unfamiliar with Ardyn, his big gimmick is that he basically can become immortal and can't die, which is kind of cool, kind of unique. There are a few characters that now have abilities similar to that, right? His other thing is that he's a unbreak character that gets free turns on break. So there are a few characters like that in the game as well. So we'll talk about that as we go through. So let's start by looking at the calls. So Ardyn's calls aren't anything I usually use. It's a very selfish call that just basically gives buffs to the caller. Doesn't do anything for the party. So the 15 CP, basically it's going to do an attack, and then it's going to give the caller overflow up and brave regen. And then the LD call, Dark Tornado, it's going to give the caller attack and max brave up, and then brave and HP damage up. And it's small, like 10%. So it's okay. Like it is something you can use to improve the damage on at least one of your characters. But otherwise, you're going to want to use calls like Kurasame. Calls like Raijin is really, really good. Luna Frey is now a really good one. Calls like that. Even this one here, I think, is a really good call just because it deletes turns. I use that one quite a bit, right? A Miditelian. So anyways, that's the calls. Let's go ahead and look at Ardyn himself. Now, my Ardyn does have the BT, but just keep in mind when you're seeing my numbers, my Ardyn is leaving a lot on the table. If you full invest Ardyn, he's going to be hitting a lot harder than what you see in my video. His armor, I have the base Lufenia armor, but I haven't plussed it or blued it. His BT is base, I haven't plussed it or greened it. And obviously you could go Ultima Weapon and then Force Enhanced 10. So this is kind of like a bare minimum Ardyn that you could use in current content, right? So let's go ahead and look at the artifacts. Ardyn's pretty basic. I actually don't have his artifacts farmed yet. I would say the main one you'd want to go with, this is how long it is since I actually farmed Ardyn. I actually have like some non-orange artifacts on here. But you'd want Attack 108 and Breezy Bearing Up. So Breezy Bearing Up is basically going to increase all of his stats by a little bit. And then you want that with Attack 108. Otherwise, you could do Attack 108, Max Brave 330. But if you can get that C50 with Attack 108, that's really what you want there, right? And then we're going to look at spheres. Ardyn really is a fairly basic damage dealer. So he really just wants very basic spheres here. The A slot, you're looking for attack or brave damage pretty much, right? I had put his own sphere on him back in the day. Like, I think the last time I was really using Ardyn was, like, when his BT originally dropped. And Ardyn was, like, I want to say the second ever BT character. So, yeah, it was pretty hype. It was a new character. Like, Ardyn was super good when his BT first dropped. So I think I just plugged his sphere right on him. But it's good for him. When you inflict a break, raises max brave and attack. And Ardyn is all about breaking. So it's a very good sphere for him, right? You could put I think Lightning's got a pretty good, like, break sphere, stuff like that. But just go through your inventory, pick anything that's attack or brave damage that you like that he can trigger. On the C slot's a pretty tough slot for Ardyn to activate. But I would say, Alphanod is a decent one. He doesn't buff a ton, but he's got a couple attacks where he buffs. So you can get that party buff that way. You could use, Maria, Garnet, and Lute are all healing ones. But you'd have to pair him with the healer. So... but otherwise, yeah, C slots are kind of hard on him. So I'd say if you have Alphanod, just use Alphanod there. Is what you could do. Or you could go with like a Theodore or something if you want to give him more healing. But that's not really ideal. I'd say Alphanod's probably your best in slot there. Now, on the E slot, I like Vanille on characters like this. Vanille Sphere, for those of you unfamiliar with it, basically if you break an enemy, you delete one of their buffs. Now, if you have the refined Vanille, like I have here, it just has a chance. I want to say it's like a 25% chance, 30% chance, whatever. But Ardyn's going to be breaking so much, those are going to hit for you every once in a while. But if you want to go all out, if you love Ardyn, you could, make a full Vanille Sphere, which is guaranteed. So I have I think in my account, I think I have 4 to 5 full Vanille Spheres that are allocated to characters. I really like her sphere. Now, it's not a favorite for everybody, right? Like some people would just rather run an actual dispeller to deal with that. So on the E slot, you could run some other things. It's like Laguna and Reno. Those are ones he can activate pretty easily. They're just more like debuff type of spheres. It just depends on what you want to do there. So you could also activate Ferris, which would give him poison. Ferris is a pretty popular one. I like that aura poison. It's pretty good there, right? So there you go. That's the artifacts and spheres. Let's hop into the showcase and actually see our boy at work here. This is my first time using him since his upgrade, so we'll see what his numbers look like. I'm not even going to worry about a friend unit. Yeah, get all your GIMP selfies out of here. We don't need any GIMP selfies. We'll just hop in. I just brought Luna, Frey, and Rem just so I can make sure I get them supported, get them a lot of turns. Just hop in right away. Now, what I recommend you do with Ardyn is use his LD right away. So he's got his overhead buff. We like to call it the hat buff, right? But it is a stacking buff. And it starts off at 3 stacks. So you see the 8 stands for 8 turns, and then that Roman numeral 3, that's how many stacks it has. What we're going to do is let's go ahead and, yeah, let's just quick prayer Ardyn right away. Sure, we'll just quick prayer him right away. And by the way, I don't have Ardyn's FR, so I will simply explain it, but I won't actually be able to demo it for you. So let's go ahead and pop that. So Ardyn's got a hat buff called Spectral Charge. It increases his attack, max brave, 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 and defense. So it basically increases all of his stats a little bit. He gets brave regen, and then he also gets overflow stolen. And the rate of brave regen and overflow is going to increase based on the stacks. Okay, so what we're going to do right off the bat is we are just going to pop the LD, which is Dark Tornado. And actually, yeah, let's just pop that right away. So Dark Tornado, it reduced. This is his big gimmick, right? So you see it reduces his HP to 0, but you see his health bar is kind of glowing pink. Whenever your character's health bar is glowing pink, it means you literally cannot die. So he cannot die by any means. I think technically if like you're on a Lufenia fight and the orb pops and it's an auto kill, I think he can die from that actually. But any like traditional HP damage or poison damage, like he just cannot die. Okay, that unbreaks all the enemies, does that big AoE attack. So because he's breaking, you're going to get a delay from a break delay, right? And then he gets a free ability use on his next turn. And then it gives himself the overkill buff for 15 turns. So for 15 turns, he's basically immortal. So there's no reason in modern DFFOO that you can't just have that upkept the entire fight, right? And then what that did is it gave him 2 stacks to his hat buff. So now his hat is maxed out at 5. So we're getting the full buff. So the reason why you want the hat at 5 is because it's going to make his other attacks do a lot better, right? Now on the free skill use, you could either say, I would say Warp Strike you'd want to use, or the AA. What I'll do is, I guess since I'm on a free turn, let's use Warp Strike, which is the 15. So let's pop it and kind of see what the damage is looking like here. Okay, and then he gets the follow-up. Okay, so one thing you're going to notice is he gets that follow-up attack. So he gets that follow-up attack just from his hat being at 3 or more stacks. So that's coming from the stacks as well. The Warp Strike that we just saw, okay, it unbreaks a target, and it does the brave attack. And then it does a brave gain between HP attacks. And then it does a bigger brave gain if it breaks. So breaking, it'll increase the damage that it does. And then that also refreshes his hat buff. And it adds 1 stack to it if it's not at max out stacks, right? So that's that. Let's do the AA. So the AA is break, reset, slash. So this basically will unbreak and then break the enemy. Which means, or actually, sorry, it just unbreaks them, but it's a free turn. And then now what happens is, so for those of you unfamiliar with these break, re-break, free turn characters, the way it works is if you break an enemy, you get a free turn. Now, if you're on your free turn and you break again, you can't like chain those together. So what you have to do is if you're on a free turn, you have to interrupt it with a different like free turn skill. So using the AA would be an example of interrupting it, right? So let me just chain off a couple for you here. So let's do Aura of Darkness, which is the 35. So let's pop that. This is basically your main AoE Brave Shave. But more often than not, you're going to want to use Warp Strike as like your filler move. But this is if you need AoE, okay? Okay, so pretty decent little bit of damage there, right? And you saw we got a free turn from Break. So Aura of Darkness did a Brave Gain, AoE attack, and that gives him a buff called Shadow Step. The Shadow Step is the buff that allows him to get free turns on Break. So you do want to upkeep that, okay? And then it also gives him an attack max Brave up. So right now, I'm on a free turn. So if I did something that broke the enemy, I would not get another free turn. But once again, if I interrupt the turn, so I can do break, reset, slash again, I interrupted the turn with a free skill. Now I'm no longer on the free turn. And so now if I break him here, it'll go ahead and give him another free turn. So you can kind of chain together free turns that way. So you're going to see after this turn finishes, it's going to say free turn here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into the burst phase, just so I can show you guys what that looks like. So let's go ahead and hop into the burst phase. And then we'll kind of get through this because I don't have him green, so I can't just like show you the burst attack. So what I'll do here is I'll just pop the LD again. Once again, drains all of his health, but he's immortal. By the way, when you're looking at mission requirements, like the HP mission requirement, any self-inflicted damage doesn't count. So like if you look at my mission, I'm at 0 HP damage taken. So don't worry about like self-inflicting damage to yourself. You will still meet your goals or your requirements there, right? All right. So now what we've got is we do have the EX. So I do kind of want to pop that so you guys can see it. The EX is actually very good. And it says double plus. So I'm going to explain that. He has a plus version and a double plus. So this unbreaks. So once again, we're going to get the delay on break there. All right, don't worry about the phone. We'll get through the video. My phone's pretty low here, but I want to get this character guide out ASAP, right? Okay, so what the EX did is it unbreaks and it breaks all enemies, okay? And then, so what it does is it normally just unbreaks. And then it does the break if your hat is at 5 stacks. So the EX is really strengthened from having the 5 stacks, okay? Does the big AoE attack as you saw there. He brave gains in between. He gets bigger brave gains if it's at 5 stacks for the hat. Extends all of his buffs by 1 turn. And he gets a free ability use on the next turn, right? Which is really, really good. Also, I forgot to mention, one of his buffs, I don't remember specifically which one, but one of his buffs like makes it so that when he gives himself buffs, it extends them all by 1 turn. So that's just something else that is a part of this kit, right? All right, let's go through and just finish our attacks out. Okay. You can see the Warp Strike got the nice break there because it unbreaks, which is very good. I don't believe he had that before this. I do believe that was added with his upgrade. Just like he literally can just unbreak with Warp Strike. That's pretty solid. Which is, so the reason why I like Vanille with this guy is Vanille Sphere triggers anytime you break. So this guy is literally breaking like non-stop, especially if you're using Warp Strike, right? If not, you can use the AA. So you could knock off really powerful buffs that the enemy has. So Ardyn, I do really like Ardyn as a candidate for the Vanille Sphere. All right, let's use the BT. We can talk about what the BT effect is. I kind of want to see the damage here. Well, the damage won't be that impressive because it's not green. If it's green, I'm guessing it does like a mill AoE. That's pretty standard for a BT these days. So his BT effect is actually not that crazy, which is why when I did my BT guide, he really isn't a character you have to have the BT for by any means. So you saw the big attack that we did there. His burst effect, basically, it's a stacking buff. He gets a stack every time he breaks an enemy, and it's only maxes all at 3 stacks, so he'll max that out pretty darn quick, right? So right now it's at stack 1, but as I break, it's going to stack up, and it just improves basically the auras that it gives. But it's an HP damage up, HP limit up, max brave up, and then brave regen up. And the max brave and the brave regen, those are what scale up with the stacks, right? So right now, if I were to say, actually, I can just AoE here, because they're going to get broken, okay? So I broke the enemies, and you're going to see my BT is going to add a stack. So now it's at 2 stacks, right? And once again, it does max out at 3 stacks. So we'll go ahead and we can just swap turns here. But because Ardyn's BT, it's just like I said, just some generic buffs. Like there's way better BT effects to go for. Now, if you get along the way, great. Go for it, right? So this should break again. And then that's going to put his BT at max stack. So he's just getting, once again, once at max stacks, he's getting better max brave up and better brave regen up, right? Okay, so there we go. So I mean, the EX damage is super solid. That was like a mill with like 600k splash. And this is like, I'd call this like a gimped Ardyn, right? Like Ardyn can be looking way better. So we've got that, right? So lastly, I'll end the video by just talking about the FR. He actually has a very solid FR effect. And his partner is Leon, which is a really nice pairing, right? So his FR is going to unbreak all the enemies, right? And it unbreaks after each HP attack, which is very, very good, right? And then the force time effect, enemies unbreak after 3 turns. I think normally an enemy unbreaks after 5. So this basically makes all enemies just unbreak naturally faster, which is pretty good. So then basically if you break an enemy on your turn, it's 20% to the HP, but if Ardyn does it, it's 40. And then melee brave damage on turn, 20% for a normal character, 30 for Ardyn. Very basic, right? So it's just if you break and you have melee damage. So it's very easy to have a team comp that can work with that. So if Ardyn is breaking and doing melee damage, he's getting 70% a turn. So Ardyn can put up a very powerful self-inflicted force time, right? So So anyways, guys, there you go. That's Ardyn. Let me know what you all think. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.